Hello, everybody. Jax West from Steven Avery Project, MAM Gossip, Justice with Jax. I am on a new laptop, so hopefully everything will work okay today. I'm going to wait a little bit for people to get on here. Um, yeah, this whole screen is different now. Um, Hello, Christopher. There's a whole lot of different stuff in here for the live video. Weird. So I am live. Hello, Bryce. Oh, both my boys are here. It is Saturday, April 11th. Hello, Denise. It is 10 a.m. Chicago time. When I am done with this live, it will still be available here on Steven Avery Project. But what is it? Only a month that Facebook allows live videos to stay. So it will get uploaded to my Justice with Jax. Oh my God, a lot of sounds for somebody who has a lisp that I'm trying to consciously not lisp as I say Justice with Jax. Um, so it'll go on the Justice with Jax YouTube page where you can find tons of my past videos there. Hello, Denise. It's 4 in the UK. See, Denise, I did a chat GPT. I know chat GPT is bad and we're not supposed to use it, but whatever. Um, and I asked what is the best time for me to do a live video that works around the world. And so it says, like 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. my time. So, I'm doing my best to make it easier for everybody to join live, but not everybody can. And I know it's a Saturday too, so people have better things to do on a Saturday morning than to sit in story time with me. But I'm hoping to keep this at about an hour. It will depend on where we're at in the book, if I or how I'm feeling if I go longer than that hour. But it's like it's going to be allegedly nice here today, and I want to go for a walk and go see the spring flowers. So 10 a.m. works well for me too, that I can do this in the morning and then have a nice afternoon walk. So, what I've been doing is I'm reading from a book I wrote. Um, when did we say this came out? 2022. So, it's Wrongfully Abused, Making an Advocate for Steven Avery. And uh, people always ask me what happens with the money uh, from this book. First of all, I make literally like 18 cents for every book that's sold. So, and hardly any books have sold. uh, and it's self-published on Amazon, and Amazon like gets all the money. So, I'm not getting rich off this book, and I give Steven money all the time. So let's, you know, be real on that. So this book also is my thoughts on the case, and is also goes into my history with the case and my interactions with Steven, his family, people who call themselves supporters, guilters, that kind of thing. Oh gosh, Bryce is gonna rake the leaves. Um, so this this is a book about me. Oh well, thank you, Bryce. Um, and I am planning after however long it takes me to do these live videos to read the entire book, when it's done, I will start working on the sequel, since this is my history up until 2022, and things have happened since then, like, talking to Steven again. Thank you, Denise. Um, and I also want to, in the next book, talk more about um, what I think happened. If you've been following me here on Steven Avery Project or an MAM Gossip or wherever, I've talked about it over the last 10 years, what I think happened, but I'm going to put it in a book. So I've got the page marked from where I left off last time, which, pretty funny. This is what I used for the bookmark. And this is from when I went to go see Strang and Buting live at a place here in Chicago. And Buting bumped me up. I talk about it in the book, so I won't go too much into it. And Buting gave me backstage passes, and so this is what I had to wear on my shirt, so I could get backstage. And it just so happens last night I went to a comedy show, and it was the same spot that I saw Strang and Buting at. And so I was there with my husband and my best friend and his partner. And, it's Chicago, and it's this old, beautiful building. And I totally forgot about seeing Strang and Buting there. And so then my husband says to my friend, have you ever been in the basement here? And Ken's like, no, I didn't even know it had a basement. And so he's like, yeah, when we came here for Strang and Buting, we got to go down in the basement. And it was really cool because it's this old building and you're going down these old creepy stairs. And then downstairs in the basement, where it was this big open room, like all these different performers, bands, whatever that has performed in the Chicago theater, had written stuff all over the walls down there. So it was cool to see celebrities and such, what they wrote on the wall. And yeah, so that was last night. So where we're at, which I discovered the last time I did in part 1, that when I self-published this book, I didn't put any page numbers. There's no, so I can't tell you what page I'm on. So note to self, correct that the next time I self-publish. Or if there's a publishing company out there who wants to pay me to write a book for you, you can publish it for me. So where I'm at is when I went to see Brendan Dassey's attorneys. Miley, my sexy girlfriend. Miley has the most adorable grandson. Just saying. I'm so jealous. I want a grandchild, but both my son and my stepdaughter both say they don't want children. Whatever. So where we're starting off today is me talking about when I went and saw a recap of Brendan Dassey, A True Story of a False Confession, is what they called it. And so I'm going to start over here before I get to the article. So things just continue to snowball for me as I got more and more involved in the case. I continue to write articles for Free Brendan, which, note to self, or note to you all. Hello from Wisconsin! Thinking of that 70s show. Hello, Wisconsin! In my Facebook memories yesterday was stuff that I had posted on Free Brendan, and I am still an admin, I believe, of Free Brendan, but I just totally abandoned it years ago. I'm not the one who started that page, but so stuff has been posted on Free Brendan, because when I first started as like where I am in this book, I did not have Steven Avery project. Somebody else was running that. So I was Free Brendan. And so in my Facebook memories from yesterday is one of my trips to Manitowoc when I don't need to answer that. That's my farm. It's Costco calling me, Miley. My Costco pharmacy calling to tell me my prescriptions are in. Um, so I was friends with the family at that time, and so it was my visit to one of my visits there where it was pictures of me with Barb and Carla at Steven's trailer. And then also the video I took behind, or my husband filmed it, of behind Steven's garage where the fire pit is. And then when we filmed my Pam Walk of God. So that was, yeah, anniversary yesterday. So 10 years ago yesterday. I digress. Oh, Bryce is saying he's only seeing his comments in here. Is anybody else having that issue? Just so we know. Okay, back to where I was. I was on an Injustice Anywhere podcast talking about the cases. On April 5th, 2016. Oh, wow. We're at 10 years from that, too. I was asked to be the spokesperson for a worldwide rally that was going to be held on June 11th for Steven Avery and Brendan Dassey. Thank you, Denise. I had initially volunteered to organize one in Chicago. I contacted one of Brendan's lawyers, Steven Drizzen, and asked his opinion on the location. I got the information on a permit and contacted the venue to find out what I needed to do to book that space. I got the date saved. On April 6th, I attended a speaking engagement that both of Brendan Dassey's lawyers presented in Chicago and wrote an article on it. I learned many things I didn't know about the case and included it in the article. One of the things people were not believing. Steven Drizzen had pointed out that Brendan was interrogated on February 26th and 27th, not the 28th. He was then brought in again on March 1st. Why? Because on February 28th, the lab report was released that said the alleged skull fragment of Teresa Halbach had something consistent with lead on it, meaning she was shot in the head. Up until then, no one had ever said anything about Teresa Halbach being shot. Now they needed that evidence introduced into the narrative. So they brought Brendan Dassey back in, and that's the episode where you see them ask, "What did you do to her head, Brendan? Be honest." Brendan Dassey fumbles to tell them what they want to hear and makes wild guesses, until finally he is asked, "I am just going to come out and say this. Who shot her in the head?" So when I wrote about that interrogation, people said they didn't believe it because they had never seen any documentation on that. Imagine my surprise when one day I got a Facebook message request from Steven Drizzen saying he read my article, and he then sent me the document to include in my article. Here is that article. A recap of Brendan Dassey, a true story of a false confession, written by Jax West. This event was on April 6, 2016, at the Northwestern Pritzker School of Law in Chicago. Yeah, that Pritzker, my governor, whom I love, but we're not talking politics. Brendan Dassey's lawyer, Steven Drizzen, clinical professor of law and assistant dean of the Blum Legal Clinic, and Laura Nyrider, co-director of the Center on Wrongful Convictions of Youth and clinical assistant professor of law, discussed his case, and then were joined by Judge Michael K. Brown, Hennepin County District Court Judge, Dr. Antoinette Kavanaugh, Ph.D., ABPB, and forensic clinical psychologist, and Robert Milan, managing director of Strauss Friedberg, and former first assistant state's attorney of Cook County for a Q&A. Here is my recap of the event. It started at 6:30 p.m., but my boyfriend, now my husband, but my boyfriend and I were unfortunately late due to horrible traffic. Yeah, Chicago traffic at 6 o'clock is horrible. When we got there, I was told there probably weren't 2 seats together, but then it turned out there were plenty of seats together still left. But the auditorium was pretty packed. I sat down just as Steven Drizzen was saying he binge-watched Making a Murderer. Then he introduced us to Sarah Marie Dillard and the Underground, who performed the song Bad Man. You can check out the song here. And then I have a link to the YouTube video or visit their website, which I am Facebook friends with Sarah still. She's down in southern Illinois, like by Springfield. She still performs, but not with that band. And I don't know if she does that song anymore. In the book, I've got pictures of her performing it at that event. I challenge you not to tear up as you listen to the lyrics. Poor people lose all the time. So she wrote that song after seeing Making a Murderer, and what it made her feel and think of Steven. Steven Drizzen told us that he was asked in 2007 to represent Brendan Dassey. He had a student at that time who he assigned to work the case. She then replaced him as the legal director and is now the lead attorney for Brendan, Laura Nyrider. Laura Nyrider went over the case starting with Steven Avery's first wrongful conviction. She said that Brendan Dassey was first questioned since he was Steven's alibi. Now he sits in prison until he is 59 years old. She believes his confession is false. Laura Nyrider said Brendan's mom, Barb Taddock, asked him if he did it. Then we saw the clip of Brendan Dassey telling his mom that they got into his head. There are realities and myths of false confessions. There were 3 errors during the police investigation: misclassification, coercion, and contamination. The first one brings us to behavioral analysis and the infamous Reid technique. This is taught to many law enforcement officials. It says the person telling the truth if they have open palms, frontal alignment, and smooth posture changes. You're telling a lie if you slouch, which I always slouch. I'm slouching right now. I have horrible posture. You're telling a lie if you slouch, lack frontal alignment, put your hand over your mouth or eyes, say, "I don't know," or "I don't recall," and refer to God. So I guess you can use this against all of law enforcement who testified against Steven Avery or Brendan Dassey or deposed in Steven Avery's suit against Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department, because how many times were their answers, "I don't know," or "I don't recall"? Steven Drizzen said for the coercion error, the interrogator will say they know you committed this. They will interrupt the suspect. They will move way close to the suspect and sit knee to knee. They will even pat their knee. They will use false evidence ploys that are just outright lies. The Reid technique was never to be used on children or someone mentally challenged. They ask leading questions to give the suspects the answers they are looking for. Laura Nyrider said Making a Murderer did not show you that the interrogation we saw of Brendan Dassey was the 4th time they had interrogated him over 48 hours. On February 27, 2006, they went to Brendan Dassey's high school and pulled him out of class and took him to the principal's office. They did not film this interrogation, and there is only audio of this available, which is sometimes hard to understand. You can listen to the entire interrogation here, and I have the link to YouTube. The investigators would say to Brendan Dassey that he must have seen things in that fire pit. You must have seen a hand, feet, a head, something. Brendan eventually agreed and then said he saw a finger, foot, and a forehead, the very things investigators Mark Wiegert and Tom Fassbender had just planted in his head. Then they planted in his head that Teresa Halbach was assaulted. Later on, February 27th, they took Brendan Dassey to the police station. This time, the investigators videotaped the interrogation, and you can watch that at this YouTube link. Mark Wiegert and Tom Fassbender had Brendan Dassey now repeat everything they planted in his head at the earlier interrogation. Finally, the interrogators get Brendan Dassey in the evening of February 27th at a hotel where they put him and his mom in. They did not record this interrogation in any form. Then on March 1, 2006, Mark Wiegert and Tom Fassbender pulled him out of school and drove him 45 minutes away to the police station, where they now got Brendan Dassey to confess to rape and murder. You can watch that here at that link. There is a report that says Brendan Dassey hasn't been able to look an adult in the eye since the 3rd grade. We were then shown more clips of Brendan's interrogation. I am not going to recap them, as there is only so much I can stand of those videos. It is just too heartbreaking and infuriating to watch. Laura Nyrider shows how in that final interrogation, Brendan Dassey is literally backed into a corner and the exit is blocked. Mark Wiegert and Tom Fassbender promise to help him, tell him over and over to be honest. They use a parental dynamic, saying they are parents and have a son. They bring up Brendan Dassey's mom. Steven Drizzen said there are 3 facts not widely known about this case. Law enforcement are supposed to hold back some facts of the case from a suspect. Brendan was not interrogated on February 28th. What happened on the 28th? A report came from the crime lab that said Teresa Halbach was shot in the head. So they needed Brendan to give them that fact. Also, the battery in Teresa Halbach's RAV4 was disconnected, and Teresa's belongings were in a burn barrel. Then we saw clips of Mark Wiegert and Tom Fassbender trying so hard to lead Brendan to these 3 things. Telling Brendan that something happened to the head. The crowd laughed loudly here, and I get that they're laughing at the idiocy of this, but I am sorry, I just can't find this funny. I literally had tears in my eyes. It saddens me so to see this innocent boy get manipulated by these authority figures. Then we see the interrogators ask, who shot her in the head? What did Steven Avery do under the hood? Did he put some things in the burn barrel? What happened to her personal effects? Steven Drizzen said this is one of the worst cases of police interrogation practices he's ever seen. There was not a shred of evidence that puts Brendan in that trailer. Do people really think Brendan was able to clean up so well as to not leave any trace? We watched more clips. Brendan Dassey asking if he is only there for one day. He asks his mom, what if Steven's story is different? Then he tells his mom that they got to his head. Do you notice how Mark Wiegert and Tom Fassbender immediately return to the room after Brendan says that and shuts down the conversation? Barb Toddock asks the officers if they were pressuring Brendan. They tell her they can tell when people tell the truth because they have been doing this for a long time. But the thing to take from this is as soon as Brendan is alone with his mother, he immediately recants what he said. But once the officers walk back in, he gets quiet. Brendan Dassey's recantation was never shown to the jury. So where are we today? Well, today as in 2016 when I went to this event. Brendan Dassey's case has been denied by the state, appellate, and Supreme Courts. It is now in federal court. They are contending that Brendan had ineffective assistance of counsel. Len Kaczynski used the confession against his client. The confession was coerced and contaminated. Then they went to a Q&A panel that included Judge Brown, psychologist, there we go, now I said that word, Kavanaugh, and former Cook County State's Attorney Milan. They invited the audience to submit questions that might be answered. I submitted one that was not asked, and this is constantly a question I ask on this case. How is it possible to convict two people for the same crime, but using two different scenarios? And throughout, as I'm reading this section, I've got the pictures I took, which are probably all on Free Brendan Facebook page, where you can see them then in color. I lost a lot of interest during the panel discussion. I know this was an event for law students, so maybe that's why I lost interest, as it was more general and not directly about Brendan Dassey's case. A lot of people kept getting up to leave at this point, so it was hard to stay focused as well. They talked about what can be done to prevent juvenile false confessions. Laura Nyrider said the International Chiefs of Police are working on something. When I hear that organization, I cringe, though, as they are having a convention in Naperville that I was setting up to protest, as they were scheduled to have Mark Wiegert and Tom Fassbender speak on the great job they think they did on the Brendan Dassey case. They have since canceled the event, so the protest isn't happening. Laura Nyrider said they should never make promises of help or tell them they get to go home if they tell the truth. They should never disclose facts of the crime and shouldn't talk to a minor without a parent or lawyer present. Steven Nyrider said interrogations should be electronically recorded. Their own protocols were violated by feeding Brendan facts and promising to help him. The police officers are not lie detectors, even though they claim to be due to how long they've been on the job. He likes the PEACE technique. He said it's an acronym and wasn't going into what it stands for. Here is a link where you can read about both the read and PEACE techniques. And then I have a link. Oh, a typo. For the name Steven, the T and the E are flipped. Stephen Drizzen said Jerry Buting and Dean Strang were the best lawyers Steven Avery could buy. Len Kaczynski was the best Brendan got, and he was only paid $40 an hour to defend him. Holy crap! I'm hiring an attorney for something right now, and it's $4.50 an hour. You actually lose money to take this case on, but once again, poor people lose all the time. They talked about Ken Kratz's press conference. Robert Milan said that was outrageous, and you aren't allowed to do that in Illinois. He said you can't lay out all those details. What bothered him is that no judge stepped in. He said everybody messed up regarding this case. Nobody stepped up and did the right thing. They were asked why wasn't Brendan Dassey's mom, Barb Taddock, in the interview. Stephen Drizzen said it is not a requirement in Wisconsin that a parent be present. He said Barb is a pit bull in how she defends her son now. She was not given the information back then on how to help Brendan. They told her they were just going to ask him a few questions, so she gave them permission and has had to live with that all these years. Please press 4 now to slap Barb. Stephen Drizzen is not confident that Barb Taddock could have protected Brendan Dassey had she been in the room anyway. Parents are powerless and too often do more harm than good, so a lawyer should have been in there. Laura Nyrider said there are states that are now considering changes that a parent or lawyer needs to be present during the interrogation of a minor. Tennessee, Rhode Island, and California. Robert Milan thinks that Barb Taddock would have stopped the interrogation had she been in there, and that she wasn't there because the cops didn't allow her to be. He said the cops knew they were on tape and they still behaved that way. He said they're moronic. At the end, they mentioned how they are doing the event for free because they feel it's important for people to hear. Dean Strang and Jerry Buting are out on their speaking tour charging big money. I went to the one in Milwaukee, and you can read that recap here. And then a link to where it was at that time on freebrendan.org. I don't even know if freebrendan.org still exists. Hello, Debbies. I will also be attending their Chicago event in June, and we'll recap that one as well. Everyone groaned when Stephen Drizzen mentioned that Ken Kratz is also doing a speaking engagement. I have scheduled a protest for that event, and you can RSVP to the Facebook event. So that was it. What do we do now? We are stuck waiting on our legal system to do the right thing. But while we wait, let's get something going to change our laws so minors can be interrogated without a lawyer present. There are protests being scheduled all across the globe. Get involved. Have your voice heard. To find out more about Brendan Dassey, please visit Free Brendan on Facebook. And I don't, when I read stuff, it makes me think of things that I want to say on it, but it's like I probably wrote about it, so it's like I don't want to say it here because it's probably here. So hopefully it's in this next section here. Okay, so that was the end of that article. Also in early April, I started working on a petition called Brendan Dassey's Law. This was started by a girl in England who called for a law to be passed in Wisconsin so no minor could be interrogated without a lawyer or parent present. This is something I felt very passionate about. It's one of the biggest things I took away from MAM. I had thought it was already a law that you couldn't do that to a minor. So I wanted to help in any way to get that passed. The girl who started it is not the most stable of people. She did not have it written properly. She did not know what she was doing, and the petition was going nowhere. My partner, Bruce, and I reached out to her and offered our assistance. Injustice Anywhere has done a few petitions successfully, so they know what needs to be done. The girl was resistant at first. Why? In my opinion, it is because she wants all the attention and accolades for it. Sadly, that is a lesson I've come to learn in the world of being an advocate for the wrongfully accused. There are supporters, then there are people who want their own fame from it. But we will get into that later. She was resistant for a while. I reached out to both of Brendan Dassey's lawyers to ask about the petition. This is probably... Okay, yes, I do talk about it in here. I was told while it isn't illegal for someone out of the country to author a petition in the United States, it would be better if it had a United States citizen on it. So finally, the girl agreed to put me on as co-author, and Bruce conferred with Injustice Anywhere's lawyers to get it written properly. I pushed the petition everywhere I could think of. I would pay to boost the post on Facebook. At one point, we even got the petition to trend on change.org. But we also faced resistance, as some people didn't think it was right to pass this law in Brendan's name, since he is technically a convicted murderer and rapist. I would defend it, saying whether Brendan Dassey is guilty or not, and he is innocent, if you had this in place, there would be no questioning whether or not Brendan was coerced. The wording we put on the petition after I consulted with Laura Nyrider, this is what I wanted to talk about, was that it had to say that no minor could be questioned without a lawyer present. Laura had some really good points about that. A parent doesn't necessarily know your rights. I have a 27-year-old son. He's now in his 30s. And I know if I was in the room where he was being accused of something I knew he didn't do, I would lose my mind and go on the attack, which does no good for my son at all. It would be best, oh my God, be best, if I wasn't even in the room as I don't know if I could keep myself quiet and composed while accusations are hurled at my child. The petition now read that a minor had to be represented by a lawyer. Laura Nyrider also added that the minor cannot waive their right to an attorney until they have spoken to one to advise them of their rights. The last thing she added was that the lawyer could confer with the minor electronically. She said in some rural areas, it could be days before a lawyer could get to where the child was being held. So if they could call in, Skype, FaceTime, whatever. This was prior to Zoom. Oh, science, Bryce. Oh, hello, Anna. Um, at least then the minor had someone to represent them and look out for them. In June, I went to see Dean Strang um and Jerry Buting again, this time in Chicago. Here is my recap of that event. And this is the picture. A recap of a conversation on justice in Chicago by Jax West. I saw Dean Strang and Jerry Buting's Milwaukee conversation back in March and recapped that event on Free Brendan. When I found out that they would be coming even closer to me and would be in Chicago, I had to buy tickets for that as well. I figured that each speaking engagement would have different topics, so I could hear something new each time. I was right. We weren't allowed to take any pictures inside the Chicago theater. Same thing at the event I did last night, but at the very end, we were able to take pictures. Once the show began, and the place was really dark, so hopefully I will be able to read my notes to write this recap. LOL. But off we go. First, I should start with how awesome Jerry Buting is. I am one of the organizers for the Manitowoc rally that is going to be next week, June 11th, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. And I am also part of the group that has been planning all of the We Stand for Innocence rallies all over the world. You can read more about that on Free Brendan. One of the organizers of another rally suggested, since I was going to see Dean Strang and Jerry Buting, that I should message Jerry to get him to plug the rallies, as that's what she did for hers, and he did it. I asked her how I could reach Jerry Buting, and she said on Twitter. Ugh, I so don't like Twitter. I have a Twitter account, but I really only use it to get Kathleen Zellner's tweets. But this old girl was able to figure out how to message him, and to my surprise, Jerry Buting answered. He said he would mention the rallies at the end of the show. He then asked me if I had met with Brendan Dassey's lawyers after their show. I had seen Laura Nyrider and Steven Drizzen in Chicago in April, and I wrote a recap of that you can read on Free Brendan. I told Jerry Buting I did not, but I have spoken with both of them. I then asked him if I could interview him sometime, but I knew he was very busy. He asked if I would like to meet after the show. He told me to give me the names of the people going with me, and he would leave backstage passes for us at will call. Sweet. Which, that's what this is. My group got there, go to will call, and get our passes. We got a backstage pass sticker, but we were also given tickets. But then I brought my ticket I got from Will Call to an usher and asked if that was a ticket for a seat as well. She said yes and directed me to the seats. Much better seats. Score. So we moved on up. This is the only picture I have. As I said, I couldn't take any pictures of the actual show. I mean, I guess I could have, but, whatever. I behaved. As we waited for it to begin, I heard the woman next to me say something about when she dated Jerry Buting. I was assuming at that point she was a longtime friend of his who lived in Illinois, who he gave tickets to. More on that later. On to the show. The show was moderated by Rob Wildeboer, who is a senior editor at WBEZ. He introduced the lawyers, and there were a lot of catcalls for the dreamy Dean Strang. The first thing they talked about is where the cases are now. Brendan Dassey's appeal is still pending, while Steven Avery's are all done. The only thing Steven can do now is find new evidence that could get him a new trial or exonerate him. Dean Strang gave huge props to Brendan's lawyers, Stephen Drizzen and Laura Nyrider, for everything they have done for Brendan Dassey. They said no one was paid any money from Netflix. Not the Avery family, Steven Avery, Brendan Dassey, the lawyers, no one. The filmmakers were already filming 3 months prior to Dean Strang and Jerry Buting even taking the case. They then had to decide if they were going to allow them to film their case. Jerry Buting said they agreed as long as nothing aired until both trials were done and that nothing would violate the attorney-client privilege. One of the filmmakers was also an attorney, so she completely understood. Jerry Buting said that when you hear Steven Avery's voice in the documentary, his voice was taken from his calls to his girlfriend and family that are recorded in the jail. They were asked what they thought was the most convincing evidence that says Steven Avery is innocent and what evidence says he is guilty. Jerry Buting said the bones being in more than one location that was undisputed by the state that Teresa Halbach's remains were found in multiple locations is what he thinks proves innocence. The bones were found in the burn pit and the burn barrel behind Barb Toddock's trailer. Later in the show, Jerry Buting added they were also in the third location of the quarry he forgot to mention here. Jerry Buting said the bones were from all different parts of the body, all mixed up. He doesn't believe anyone would murder someone and burn the body somewhere else and then put the bones in their own backyard. Dean Strang said the bones were dumped in the pit. They weren't burned there. Dean Strang said the alleged evidence that points to guilt is Steven Avery's blood in Teresa Halbach's RAV4. Dean Strang said that everything Steven Avery said while in jail was recorded. The police would listen to his calls every day. They put Steven in a cell block alone, not just a cell alone, in an entire cell block, all by himself for 18 months. So all Steven had for human interaction were calls to his loved ones. Not one time did Steven Avery ever say a single word that would suggest he was guilty to anyone. Rob asked if the prosecution put on a better case that we just didn't see in the documentary. The lawyers both said no. The crowd roared with laughter and applause. Dean Strang said this was not their movie. It was the filmmaker's movie, so he can't say what should or shouldn't be in it. This was the story they wanted to show. He said we saw the prosecutor's best case. Jerry Buting said anything not answered in the movie also wasn't answered at trial. Jerry Buting said something that isn't mentioned is that the week Teresa Halbach went missing, Steven Avery was going to be getting a $400,000 check, tax-free, from the governor. So there was just no good motive that would explain why Steven would do this. That was more money than he had ever seen in his life. That information wasn't presented at trial. Dean Strang said 2 guys were tried for murder for the same woman, but with different theories. Ken Kratz did that press conference alleging all the things Brendan supposedly did 10 months before they went to trial, and then none of the things he said was presented in court. Brendan Dassey was tried on a different theory. Dean Strang said this is tolerated by the American courts, but why? He said it means one of those trials was not a search for truth. Is there anything they think could have been done differently? Jerry Buting said they think about that all the time. Should they have changed the venue? Called a mistrial when the juror was dismissed at the end? They beat themselves up about it all the time. The jury pool was... distracted looking at the time. The jury pool was so polluted by that press conference. If they went for the mistrial, they would just try Steven Avery again. Dean Strang said Steven Avery being sentenced to life is a social death sentence. Jerry Buting said the state hoped they could flip Brendan and get him to testify against Steven. Brendan's statements were impossible. It showed that law enforcement would stop at nothing to get Steven Avery. They coerced a kid to say things that weren't true. They needed someone to say she was shot in the head. Brendan couldn't say it because he wasn't there. Dean Strang said they had to prepare to disprove Brendan Dassey in case he testified. But also because he knew the jury had heard the press conference, so they had to disprove even if not presented. There wasn't any blood. They didn't find any cut hair. They had a gag order, so they couldn't talk to the media about it and show them it was false. The state wasn't allowed to talk about it anymore either, but then the media just had Ken Kratz's press conferences to play over and over. Dean Strang didn't watch any of Brendan Dassey's trial, even though it was all aired. He had to take leave of this whole thing. He took a vacation. Jerry Buting did watch almost all of it. Jerry Buting said they were prepared to disprove Brendan Dassey's confession if he testified, but the judge distanced himself from that confession. Dean Strang said, sadly, Brendan Dassey's case is utterly usual. Then they talked about the Reid technique. Jerry Buting said they hear all the time from people who say the police took their kid out of class and no one called them, and now the kid has confessed to something. People think that can't be legal, but it is. But there's pushback now. We need to pass laws that make the confessions of minors inadmissible. A question asked was if Teresa Halbach's brother, Mike, and ex-boyfriend Ryan Hilgas were ever considered suspects. Jerry Buting said not by the police, and the judge ruled before the trial that they couldn't introduce any other suspects. They would have to show who had access, opportunity, and motive. The state doesn't have to prove motive. Strang doesn't think the brother had anything to do with Teresa Halbach's murder. The crowd oohed at this statement. He said statistically, when a woman is harmed, it is by someone close to her who she trusts. The police zeroed their spotlight on Steven Avery almost immediately, and he wasn't part of her life. He had only met her a couple of times. Dean Strang pointed out that another woman was brutally raped after Steven Avery was zeroed in on the last time. Jerry Buting said the internet and all the sleuths out there are not hindering the case, but helping. This is where he says that there was a third spot where bones were found in a quarry. He said there is not a single photograph of any of the bones until the sites had been shoveled through. They have had over 100 scientists contact them about the EDTA. EDTA is a chemical that is used to prevent blood samples from clotting. They say the tests were set so high that you wouldn't have been able to detect EDTA were in those samples. Do they know who made those harassing phone calls to Teresa Halbach? Dean Strang said she was on the phone a lot and there were a lot of repeat calls, but no one had the same exchange number as from the area around the salvage yard. They never found out who made those calls that her employer testified about. Dean Strang said Len Kaczynski was never a public defender. He takes appointments. Strang said Wisconsin has the lowest pay rate in the country for public defenders. They are paid $40 an hour in court and $25 an hour for travel. Jerry Buting said it's actually gone down, as when he started it was $45 an hour. Jerry Buting was shocked when he saw the Michael O'Kelly video, that he would coerce him to draw a picture and tell Brendan Dassey to make it bigger to show how she was shackled to the bed. Then there was the pre-printed form where he only had two choices, sorry or not sorry. How about I didn't do it? The crowd cheered. Oops. Dean Strang said the defense lawyer thought he was working toward a plea agreement, but there's appropriate ways to do that. Jerry Buting said it is indefensible under any circumstances to let your client be interviewed without representation. Dean Strang talked about the Center for Wrongful Conviction of Youth and the various innocence projects that people could look into in order to help. He said they make a real difference in our criminal justice system. He said he doesn't have the passion of Stephen Drizzen, but they were handed the microphone because of making a murderer, so they thought they should use it if they could. He said if you don't have money or time to volunteer, then he wants people to take the mics from them and continue this conversation at home, at dinner with their family. He said we should pay attention to elections and vote. Serve on a jury if summoned. Jerry Buting ended the discussion by plugging our rallies. I cheered that one. He said the people at the rallies are not going to accept status quo, and we aren't going to make it easy on the system. He said the media likes to cover protests, and he wants us to keep it up. So that was the show. I had to wait with a small group of people to be brought backstage. We were led down these old stairs. I know my friend Ken won't be watching this video, but here it is, Ken, what we were talking about last night. We were led down these old stairs and through hallways where people have written all over the walls. The cast from various shows in that venue had written on the hallway walls. It was really neat. We were taken to a room that is like a big meeting room. Dean Strang and Jerry Buting talked to the people there. Well, I waited my turn. The woman I had been sitting next to came up to me and said she had been sitting next to me and she saw me taking notes. I explained that I write articles about the show and that Buting invited me to come backstage. She then put out her hand to shake my hand and introduced herself. Jerry Buting's wife. And there's a picture of that's a Dean Strang surrounded by a bunch of people in the room. Oh, you can see Buting is back here. You can't really see, the light sucks, and it's a black and white picture, but that should be on Free Brendan. She went and got her husband and brought him over to me. He came and shook my hand and did the same for the 3 people I had with me. He said he thinks he messed up the name for our rallies and said we stand for justice instead of innocence. I said it's all good. I started to tell him about what we have been dealing with in Manitowoc, but he said he read my article. That's pretty cool. You can read that article on Free Brendan. So we'll see if that article is in here of the pushback. Morning, Nana. The pushback I got for that rally. I filled Jerry Buting in on the latest status of the Manitowoc rally and how I am doing everything I can to make sure we know our rights, are peaceful, and don't break any rules. He agreed that that was the way to go. Then I got my picture taken with him. So one side is just a picture of Strang and Buting talking there, and then one picture, that's the one of me with Buting, where you can see on my shirt that I'm wearing this. And I'm wearing a shirt for the rally that my husband made. And then I was also wearing a butterfly necklace. I asked him if he would sign the rally shirt I brought along for one of the women who is helping organize the Manitowoc rally, and she is obsessed. He said he has a horrible autograph, but he did it. There's a picture of the shirt he signed. So I am really happy I went to it the second time. I learned a couple things I hadn't heard before, like Steven Avery was about to get $400,000 that week. I also liked that they talked about how 2 guys were charged for the same crime but different theories. That's something that really bothers me about the whole thing. We're almost at an hour, but I'm still going to go on to the next chapter I titled The Plot Thickens. Aha. I can see here's talk about the rally. And so much has happened with those rallies since I organized that first one. Hmm. But, all right, here we go. I was organizing a June rally at the Manitowoc courthouse with two other girls. One girl had no clue what she was doing, and the other, like Curtis is who started Steven Avery Project, and the other, like Curtis, really just cared about press. I was asked to, I have in quotes, spearhead that word, because that's the word she used. You need to take note of spearhead. I was asked to spearhead the event. As I did when organizing the protest against the cops who coerced Brendan Dassey, my first step was making sure whatever I did was legal. I turned in an application for a special events permit. Then I was told that Manitowoc was going to charge me over $2,000 for the event. What? They wanted me to pay for the Manitowoc County Sheriff Department to provide security, as well as garbage cleanup. Oh, and they told me that I had to have $1 million liability insurance policy. I told them then that I will just go without a permit, as it is my constitutional right to peacefully assemble and protest. They said, no, it isn't. I said I will remain on the public sidewalks. They said they weren't public and they own them. I said, no, they don't. That is when I stopped direct contact with the Manitowoc Sheriff's Department. I reached out to the Wisconsin ACLU and told them what was going on. They said if I wanted to, I could give them permission to speak on my behalf to Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department to resolve this. I jumped on it. The ACLU told them they are violating my rights and they wanted all correspondence where they discussed me internally. Eventually, Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department knew there was nothing they could do, and it was agreed that we could rally there as long as we stayed off their property, the exact thing I had told them I was going to do. I had to talk to the Manitowoc Police Department to make further arrangements. I want people to realize that the sheriff and police departments are two different entities. The police did not frame Steven Avery or Brendan Dassey. That was all Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department. The police were very nice to me and helpful. They told me we could not use any sound amplifiers unless we got a permit. That's not a problem. We don't need that. I had been told previously that you have to keep moving at all times. They told me while it's technically true, we don't have to always be moving. The unofficial rule is meant so you can't try to impede anyone else's movement. It could cause a physical altercation if there are two sides protesting at the same time. I'm going to finish this paragraph, but I have something I want to say on that. I told them how we had people like Steven Avery's mother, Dolores, who cannot stand or walk the whole time, and people were very worried they would be arrested. They told me that they would give us a special spot in the parking lot where we could set up chairs, tents, whatever we needed, where people could be seated without a problem. I wrote an article on that mess, and here it is. So before I get into that, a thing I want to add is this really kicked off my activism. I am now a fairly known activist here in Illinois. I have organized countless rallies, marches, protests, and so this having to keep moving at all times, I have used that to my benefit when I have gotten in people's faces and they're standing on a sidewalk and I'm just walking back and forth on the sidewalk and they're just standing there. And then I've gotten chest to chest with them and going, you need to move. You're impeding my movement. You need to move because I'm an asshole like that. And it's that constant, if I knew then what I know now, because I know so much more about protesting, and due to ACLU's help on this, I am such a huge fan of the ACLU that I have volunteered for their annual luncheon for the last 10 years now. It's actually coming up in 2 weeks here. That my boss is letting me be off of work to go because, I don't have the money to give to the ACLU, but I can give them my time. Just like one of the things that Stranger Buting had said, you don't have money to help these situations, but you can give your time. And so I volunteer at this luncheon where I have to stand there for people to come give me their name, and I find their name tag that gives them their table number and all this, and it's a fabulous event. And I have contacts now with the Illinois ACLU that like they paid me to be down in our state capitol for a month to go and protest our legislators when we were trying to get a bill passed, when I have needed the ACLU to come speak at an event. uh, um, I love the ACLU, and when people ask me on certain things, where should they donate to, a lot of times I tell people to donate to the ACLU because they defend all causes. So, but I don't want to get into politics, but I love the ACLU. All right, so here is the article that I wrote on my fight for this rally. I titled the article "From Making a Rally to Push Me, Shove You" by Jax West. If you have read my previous articles, you know my background on how I got involved in the whole Making a Murderer saga. If you haven't, stop now and go read them. I am quite interesting, lol. Let's pick up where I am currently. I got involved in a worldwide peaceful rally that the people voted to call We Stand for Innocence, and a Facebook group formed. You can check it out on Free Brendan. The events kept multiplying. Here is the final flyer for it, and I have a picture of it. My husband made that flyer, by the way. I am running the Manitowoc event along with, and now I've redacted the names because these people suck, and so I just referred to them as Minion 1 and Minion 2. They organized the last Manitowoc courthouse protest that was in January. They were told at that time that no permit was needed and there weren't any requirements like sign size, etc. But now when Minion number 2 contacts the same person she allegedly talked to the last time, the rules have changed. She was told we have to have a permit to be on the courthouse property. Last time, they even got to go in the courthouse as it was so cold. But now we need a permit. We wanted to do everything the correct way, so Minion number 2 got the information for the permit. She emailed it to me. I filled it out and faxed it in that day, as it says they have to have it 4 weeks prior to the event, and we are just over that now. The permit did not have stuff on there about insurance, etc., but that doesn't mean it was required for this. I had previously organized 2 protests and started on a rally. The 2 I organized were when Mark Wiegert and Tom Fassbender were going to speak at a law enforcement convention in Naperville, Illinois. I called the Naperville Police Department and asked about a permit. I was told I didn't need one. I just needed to stay on the sidewalk or on the parkway, as that is public property. I also have to keep moving. We can't have anything vulgar on the signs or on the shirts. I can't block anyone from going in the building or block traffic. I then asked if I should call them back if it was definitely happening, and I was told they have never been asked that before, and they would much appreciate if I would call them 1 hour prior to the event so they could make sure our rights were protected as well. Then I was organizing a protest against Ken Kratz when he was going to bring his traveling circus to Rockford, Illinois. I called Rockford Police and was told I had to talk to the village. The village told me that I didn't need a permit, and then they told me all the same things I was told by Naperville Police. They also said the police would appreciate a heads-up call if the event was actually happening. Both of those events were canceled. No one knows why for sure. Then I started organizing this rally to be held at Daley Plaza in Chicago. At first, the location told me I needed to pay all this money for a permit. But once I explained to them what this was for, they said a permit wasn't required. At that time, there was one rally scheduled for Madison, Wisconsin. Then another was scheduled for Manitowoc. I thought it was pointless to have 3 rallies so close together, and that most people in the Chicago area would much prefer to go to the Manitowoc rally. I canceled the Chicago rally and jumped on board with the minions for Manitowoc. I faxed the permit application to the Manitowoc Public Works. Minion number 2 sent them a money order, as that was what they said they needed for $100 for the permit application. I asked Minion number 2 a few days later to call her contact and make sure they got it, and that nothing was missing. She was told they did get the permit, and they would need an additional $250 for a security deposit, a certificate of insurance for a $1 million policy, and there would be a charge for security and public works to clean up after the event. What? I called Manitowoc Public Works and was told the same things Minion number 2 was told. I told them that we would just stay on the public sidewalk and not have to get a permit. I was told the sidewalk isn't public, but is owned by the county. I took that as a subtle warning. She told me that our permit was being voted on that next night, and she would let me know the next day. In the meantime, we started looking into what the cost would be for the insurance policy. People from the rally group wanted to start donating money for our permit, but the minions and I really don't want to put a ton of money in Manitowoc County's pockets. We just don't think this is right, especially considering the last rally didn't require any cost. They can't say that rally is the reason they are charging so much now, as it was not a big turnout for many reasons. Someone sabotaged it by posting on Facebook that it was canceled when it wasn't. It was January in Wisconsin, so it was extremely cold, and it was a weekday. At times, there were more people there protesting the protesters than there were pro-Avery Dassey people. I wonder if the anti-Avery Dassey people are required to have a permit to be there. So that brings me to today. Manitowoc Public Works called me and said our permit was approved, but now we have 5 days to turn in a check for $250 for a refundable security deposit as long as we don't do any damage, and $1,560 that is not refundable that goes to the Manitowoc Sheriff's Department to provide security for the event. Plus, I have 2 weeks to get them a certificate of insurance for the $1 million policy. What the what? I'm sorry, but there is no way we are paying Manitowoc County almost $2,000 for our constitutional right to peacefully assemble. The First Amendment states, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of the people peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. According to Wikipedia, freedom of assembly, sometimes used interchangeably with the freedom of association, is the individual right or ability of people to come together and collectively express, promote, pursue, and defend their ideas. The right to freedom of association is recognized as a human right, a political right, and a civil liberty. The terms freedom of assembly and freedom of association may be used to distinguish between the freedom of assemble in public places and the freedom to join an association. Freedom of assembly is often used in the context of the right to protest, while freedom of association is used in the context of labor rights and in the Constitution of the United States is interpreted to mean both the freedom to assemble and the freedom to join an association. The United States Constitution explicitly provides for, quote, the right of the people peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances, unquote, in the First Amendment. So no, we will not be getting a permit. We wanted to do this the nice way. We paid the $100. We would have paid the $250 security deposit. We were looking into the insurance and would pay the $150 to $200 for that. But we will not be paying $1,560 to the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department to do their job that the taxpayers already pay them for. If this was required a couple months ago, that would be different, but it wasn't. So why is this protest different? I've reached out to the Wisconsin ACLU in 3 different ways: phone, on their website and the Facebook page. They called me back and said the sidewalks are public. Someone shall be getting back to me next week. We shall see where that goes. I called Kathleen Zellner's office and informed one of her clerks on what has happened so far. This is just outrageous, in my opinion. The rally will go on regardless. We will stay on the public sidewalks. We will keep moving so they can't say we are loitering. We do have some handicapped people attending who will need to sit on occasion, so we shall see if they are arrested for that. We will be respectful, but we will be there. We will also be contacting the press and informing them of what has gone on so far. Hopefully, we will have plenty of press there to document our peaceful rally to show that we aren't being a nuisance on a Saturday in the summer that warrant anyone being arrested. But this is Manitowoc. They don't have to have real reasons to arrest someone, now do they? They have gotten away with it at least twice that we know of. And then I have a picture of this stupid family campout thing. $30 per night per tent. Max 4 people per tent. 100% of the profit goes to Steven and Brendan's commissary accounts. Friday night's dinner is camp stew. Everyone bring a can of soup that goes in one pot. Gross. I thought that was disgusting. Saturday night dinner is a cookout. Please feel free to bring something to share. There is no bathroom on the premises, but we will have porta potties on site, so this means no shower. We are roughing it. On Saturday after the rally, we will be having a raffle and playing typical picnic games like potato sack race, water balloon toss, etc. There will be prizes. To reserve your spot, or if you would like to contribute to the raffle or in any way, you can message the Facebook event or email Minion number 1. And this thing was at Carla's house. I'm sure I'm going to talk about that in the book, so I'm not going to go on it now. We're already over an hour. Also, we have a petition for Brendan Dassey's law. One of the most heartbreaking things I took away from Making a Murderer is when Brendan was cornered in that tiny room and forced to confess to rape and murder. No child should be interrogated without a lawyer present. We hope that a lot of press will show up, not only to shine a light on this injustice, but also to be there to document anything the MCSD may try to do to anyone at the peaceful rally. Press can reach out to me if you would like to make any arrangements to be there. I hope to see you at our Manitowoc rally. If you can't make that one, find the one closest to you. We stand for innocence. Always remember, we all live on Avery Road. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. End of that article. The 2 girls I was working with were making this event into a nightmare. They wanted it to be a whole weekend of events, a camp out, an auction, and on and on. First obstacle is getting the location for a camp out. Minion number 1 contacted a campground. It was then suggested that we have it at Steven's niece, Carla's house. Carla asked her husband, but he didn't want the liability. Carla then asked me to ask him about it and talk him into it. I asked him, and he agreed as long as my boyfriend and I were there to be security, and he wanted everyone to sign a waiver before coming onto his property. We took a trip up there to look at their property and to discuss where things would get set up. I also went to the Avery salvage yard again. I walked while recording the Pam of God path from the office to where the RAV4 was found. That showed me that there was absolutely no way she could have walked that distance while looking for her missing cousin and found that vehicle in that short time. Just not possible. You would have had to walk past vehicles and not even look at them and go directly there. Why would you do that? Wouldn't it make sense to look in each car as you passed it? Where the RAV4 was found was at the very back of the salvage yard behind a pond. There are trees between the pond and the outer road that runs along the very back of the salvage yard. The pond is also deep enough that if you wanted to make a car disappear, you wouldn't see it in the pond. Another thing I had to see for myself was the bus driver testified that she saw Teresa Halbach taking pictures of a car when she dropped off Brendan and Blaine Dassey. It just never made sense to me. The bus stop is a quarter-mile from the Yonda, Dassey, and Avery trailers. It's at the mailboxes by Dolores's trailer and the salvage yard office, so we tested it out. My husband Jeff stayed down at the bus stop. I walked down to where Barb's van had been parked. I wore a bright orange shirt, actually the same shirt that I wore to the Strang Buting thing, because we had those shirts in orange and green, because orange and green are Brendan's favorite colors. Yeah, okay. So I wore a bright orange shirt and even held a camera, as I did take a bunch of pictures as well. Jeff first was zoomed in on me, and then he panned out to how you would see it with the naked eye, and you couldn't tell the color of my shirt or if I was even male or female. There is just no way possible that bus driver saw Teresa Halbach at the van if it was parked where everyone says it was. Time to get into the drama. One of Carla Chase's other minions wanted to get some press for herself, so she started contacting people to talk about this rally she had nothing to do with. She reached out to me and minions number 1 and 2 to ask if we were okay with talking to the press as well. Minion number 1 exploded. She didn't want anyone to talk to the press but her. She then told me I couldn't be a part of her event. I told her it wasn't her event and that I had done all the planning for it. Carla got involved then, as minion number 1 kept whining to her. Carla told me that she could step in and tell us who was going to do what. I said she is not the boss of me or anyone, and I do not have to do as she says either. This was 3 days before the rally. My husband owns a print shop. I had him making so many things for this rally. People were ordering shirts, signs, banners. I spent many hours at his shop helping make all these shirts. The day after my talk with Carla, I am woken up the next morning by a message from Bruce from Injustice Anywhere, who I work on Free Brendan with. He told me that overnight we were kicked off the petition we had written, and someone edited it back to the mess the English chick had made before we took it over. Carla had also contacted Bruce and tried to convince him I was a thief and had stolen money. So many people had accused Carla of being out for money, and I had defended her. Now I was seeing for myself just how evil she was. I called her and chewed her out. She had no defense. She would make excuses and lie. I wasn't buying it. Now I was in a quandary. I am on the permit. I am the contact for the police. I have the Facebook event. Everything for this event is in my name. I felt very strongly in rallying for Steven Avery and Brendan Dassey, and I had wanted to gather signatures for the petition. Plus, people had ordered things I was supposed to give them at the rally. What should I do? Jeff wanted us to still go. He had become very friendly with Carla's husband and had promised him we would be there to protect him. I reached out to Barb Toddock and asked what she wanted me to do. At that time, Barb and Carla hated each other. Well, let's be real. They always hate each other. But sometimes they have to pretend to get along. Barb and Scott Toddock told me to still come up there, and I could just stay by them as they wanted nothing to do with Carla and her minions. I didn't have much time to think about it. The event was in 2 days. I eventually decided it was best if I didn't go, because if I did, then the minions would make this a battle, and that wasn't going to help the cause. Jeff and I looked into the cost of now having to ship the stuff we made up to Barb Toddock. But since it would be overnighted, it was going to cost way more than I was willing to spend, as I had given that family enough money. We decided to drive up there to give them the merchandise. Someone else agreed to meet us halfway and picked up the merchandise. We drove to Wisconsin and delivered these huge boxes full of shirts, wristbands, signs, petitions, you name it. Barb and Scott Tata kept begging us to still go. I just couldn't do it. It was going to be too much drama. I know I also wouldn't be able to keep my mouth shut if I saw any of them. So I would be the adult and not go. But I still brought them the merchandise. So I felt I went above and beyond for this rally. I canceled the Facebook event on my page. There was no way I was going to be liable for any of this. Minion number 1 had been collecting items for an auction, taking money from people. We had been told no sound amplification was allowed, and she decided she was so important she had to have a megaphone and was going to disobey the rule. They removed us from the petition. They want it, they get it all. I then got attacked by the minions for deleting the event. What? I did all the work. You said I was done. Then I am done. You're lucky I brought up the printing that I was not paid for. Or I should say my husband was not paid for. Next, they started accusing me of stealing money from shirt sales. You know, shirts they didn't pay me for. Banners they did not pay me for. Signs they did not pay me for. Are they for real right now? The Carla fans just followed their rulers and were slamming me all over social media. I did the best I could to ignore it. They had their rally and camp out, and it was a total disaster. People know Making a Murderer to be this global phenomenon. Now remember, this is 2016, and Making a Murderer came out in December of 2015. So this was right in the thick of it when it was the biggest. They only had around 50 people show up, and almost half of them were family and friends. These weren't supporters, but creepy fans. The Guilters had a field day with this sad display. Of course, Minion number 1 had to use her megaphone, which was against the agreed upon rules, as well as have people pose for a picture on the steps of the courthouse. Then there was their campout and auction. As I write this, it is 6 years since the event, and people still haven't received the things they paid for. Carla and her minions took the money that came in and split it between themselves, claiming they were for expenses. Then they gave a tiny bit to each Steven Avery and Brendan Dassey. Barb Toddock was so pissed. I am called the thief for shirts people got and didn't pay for, and they actually stole money, and their crazed fans don't say a word. How sad is that? Where are we at? I think I will move on to the next chapter. I just heard my husband's truck leave, so since my husband has left, and I don't know, because I don't know if he's going to go for a walk with me. Is he doing stuff? I don't know. So we'll just continue reading, but we will end this for sure after this chapter that is titled Spotlight on Brendan. Carla and her minions tried to make me a pariah in the Making a Murderer world, but that didn't stop me from advocating for Steven and Brendan. Barb had met a fan at the rally who she became close to and named her the Toddock-Dassey spokesperson to compete with Carla, and her declaring herself the family spokesperson. Barb Minion number 1 was then put in charge of Brendan's Facebook group. I had been running Free Brendan all this time, which existed before Carla's fan group. Barb Minion number 1 added me as a moderator of Barb's group. Barb then had Brendan start calling me. Talking to Brendan is exactly as you would think. He is a really sweet kid. He was like, 26 when I started talking to him? But he was still that little 16-year-old you see being manipulated by Wiegert and Fassbender. He wanted to talk about Pokemon and video games and wrestling. He gets embarrassed easily if you tease him. It just made my heart break for him even more. This poor kid that has been taken advantage of and abused. I had been doing regular Facebook Live events on Free Brendan. We decided to do one on Brendan's group with Barb, Scott, and Brendan's dad, Pete. So I went to Barb's house to moderate the event. I had met Barb and Scott several times and been talking to them, but this was the first time I met Pete Dassey. He is clearly who Brendan takes after. He was kind of shy and just sweet. He was extremely nervous about doing this live event. We had been selling two different Brendan shirts where the profit of one would go to Brendan while the other would go to his lawyers. We did it for 3 months. Each month, we would transfer the money for Brendan into Barb's PayPal and post the invoice on Free Brendan. The money for the lawyers was just kept until the end, so they would get paid all at once. When it was over, I asked Drizzen how I should send the money or send it to them. He asked me how much it was. I told him it was $300 and change. He said he didn't care about it. So when I got to Barb's house, I gave her $400 in cash. See, I rounded it up. It was 300 and change, and I even gave her more. I joked that maybe I should hold on to it and hand it to her on camera so people knew I gave it to her. I thought I was being funny, but I so should have done that. The event went well. I made sure to ask Pete easy questions and tried to make sure I looked him in the eyes to try to calm him. Scott got all weepy at one point. Everyone got along, and the fans enjoyed being able to ask some questions. Barb was a little paranoid about it, so it only remained in the group for a day before it was deleted. People are always trolling every group to get what they can to make fun of the family. And at that time, I was fiercely defending Barb and Scott. I met one of Barb's other sons, Brian, that day. He was a very nice guy. He had his child with him, too. Brian talked about not wanting to be involved in any of this, just wants to live a normal life and was worried about his child. He had even considered changing his last name so his family wouldn't be tied to any of this. I spent my time running Free Brendan, writing articles, and moderating Barb's group. While doing that, Carla and her minions were continually taking shots at me, trying to tear me down. They were so obsessed with me. I was really concerned that Brendan was getting lost in Steven's shadow. I even wrote an article on it. Here it is. Brendan Dassey is lost in Steven Avery's shadow by Jax West. Most people think of Steven Avery when they think about Netflix's hit documentary Making a Murderer that began airing in December 2015. If you're reading this article, then you are aware of this story, so there is no need for me to rehash it for you. While what has happened to Steven twice is incredibly sad, but what has happened to Brendan Dassey is just as bad, if not worse. And then there's a picture of Brendan with Barb and Scott. And then there's also a picture of Brendan in a cap and gown. Brendan was just a sweet 16-year-old boy with a low IQ when he was questioned over and over by law enforcement officials about a missing girl. They questioned him without a lawyer or even a parent present. Brendan was like most kids. If an authority figure talks to you, then you have to answer them. He didn't know any better. Many adults don't know any better, for that matter. They told him he would get to leave if he just said what they wanted. They kept fishing, and Brendan kept trying to think up the things to say that would make them happy so he could get back to class. It is absolutely disgusting what Manitowoc has done to that poor boy. What I find just as infuriating is when you get done with watching Making a Murderer and you search the internet for anything you can on the case as you just want to know what wasn't included in the documentary, what do you find on Brendan? Go Google his name. I will wait. You find articles on Steven Avery. Now go look for Brendan on Wikipedia. Steven's page comes up. This case isn't just about Steven Avery. Brendan Dassey was taken into custody at just 16 years old. He has been in prison for going on 10 years now. Why isn't there more out there about Brendan? Brendan is currently in Columbia Correctional Institution in Portage, Wisconsin. He is doing as well as he can there. He has a cellmate he likes who is helping him get into shape. Brendan enjoys getting letters from people, and he does the best he can to write everyone back. I will put information about how you can contact him yourself at the end of this article. In one of his letters, he told me a little bit about some of the things he likes. Favorite color? Orange. Pokemon, Mew. Food, burgers. TV show, Arrow. Movie, Maze Runner. Wrestler, John Cena. Chip, Doritos. Snack, chocolate chip granola bars. Book, Graceling series by Kristen Kashore. Season, fall. Holiday, 4th of July. Football team, Green Bay Packers. Video game, Any Need for Speed. His letters point out that he still is that sweet boy we saw in the documentary. He is thankful for the attention his case is getting now, and he is hopeful that there is an end to his incarceration in sight. He is stuck waiting as his lawyers filed for him to get a new trial around 9 months ago, and they are still waiting for the decision. It could be in 2 days. It could be another 9 months. Our system is just so slow and is in desperate need of change. I did not know until I watched Making a Murderer that it wasn't illegal to question a minor without a lawyer or parent present. I was appalled to find out that it isn't illegal anywhere in the United States. So they can pull Brendan out of school, not tell his parents where he is, and ask him anything they want. That is unreal to me. What Brendan Dassey's law is looking to do is make it so there has to be a lawyer present to interrogate a minor, and they cannot waive their rights to counsel. We have already seen how Brendan was manipulated, and you just know if you didn't add that last part, they would just talk a kid into waiving their rights. We understand that it may be difficult to get an attorney to some areas in a timely manner, so they have to at least have a lawyer on Skype or talk to them on the phone. They have to have some contact with a lawyer, someone who knows their rights. I have a 22-year-old son, and if he were brought in for questioning, I would much prefer him have an attorney in the room with him than his father or I. I don't know the law. I think I could be intimidated by law enforcement, or I could be tricked. You can say you wouldn't. People talk a big game all the time of, I would do this if they did that, but you truly don't know until you're in that situation. A lawyer knows what they are doing. But then you have the Len Kaczynskis out there who just plain suck. Strang and Buting talk all the time about how court-appointed lawyers don't make squat in the amount of work they do. So you're just going to get crappy representation who just, oh my God, all the justs, I just say just all the time. So you're just going to get crappy representation who just want to get the case handled the quickest and easiest way possible. Meanwhile, the prosecution has thousands upon thousands of taxpayer dollars to spend on their experts and tests. As Steven says, poor people lose. Poor people lose all the time. Slap the minions. The longest road begins with a single step. We are starting by trying to get the Brendan Dassey law passed in Wisconsin, and then we would go to every state one by one. We are having a hard time getting the petition attention, though, as we only started a little while ago, and the frenzy of attention this case got due to Netflix has diminished. Then there was like a different petition every day, and people just got petitioned out. They feel it won't do any good. Believe me when I say this one is different. We need around 100,000 signatures before it will be taken seriously. I hope you will sign it and share it on your social media to help us get this passed. That's what I wanted to call Justice with Jax, Denise. I wanted to call it just Jax. So if you ever watched Will and Grace, he was just Jack. So I wanted to call it just Jax. And so it was Marnie Yang, somebody else that I advocate for. I was talking to her about it that, because I do Marnie's case and I do Melissa's case, and here on Steven Avery Project, people don't want to hear these other cases. So I'm going to start another page so I can cover the other cases. And so I'm like, I want to call it just Jax. And so she's the one that said Justice with Jax. So that's how it became that. But yeah, in my head too, Denise, I hear just Jax. Jazz hands. Okay. People have said that this will never pass having Brendan's name on it, since as of now he is a convicted rapist and killer. I beg to differ. Whether or not Brendan Dassey is guilty, and he is the complete and innocent Brendan Dassey, the fact remains that he was questioned without representation. Do you want your child brought in and questioned without a lawyer present? So why is it okay that it happened to Brendan? Plus, if this was in effect during Brendan's interrogation, we wouldn't be fighting for this. It protects the prosecution case just as it protects the defendant. It's a win for everyone. And my husband made this picture that I post sometimes of the complete and innocent Brendan Dassey. And he's wearing a John Cena shirt. How can you help Brendan? You can donate directly to his canteen here to send mail without money orders, blah, blah, blah. Those are all the instructions on how you could write to him. He's not even at that prison at this time. Here's how you could buy him at that time stamped envelopes for him to send stuff back to people, and then a link for where you could donate to his defense, and then a link to Free Brendan and Facebook page, and that there was freebrendan.org. Brendan isn't the first child manipulated by law enforcement, and he wasn't the last, but we can do what we can to try to make sure it doesn't happen to any kids in the future. Please remember Brendan and don't let him be overshadowed by all the attention Steven Avery gets. And that was the end of that article. The thing I think about the most regarding Brendan is that interrogation on March 1st, 2006. And I have this as a saved doc too. So what I'm about to read here, God, the light, is I transcribed the interrogation because things start to happen with that interrogation that people like try to scrub it so you don't have all of it. So I feel it's important to know exactly what was said. Wiegert. What else did you guys do? Come on. Fassbender. What he made you do, Brendan? We know he made you do something else. Wiegert. What was it? Pause. What was it? Fassbender. We have the evidence, Brendan. We just need you to be honest with us. Brendan. That he cut off her hair. Wiegert. He cut off her hair in the house? Brendan. Mm-hmm. Wiegert. Why did he do that? Was she alive? Brendan. No. Wiegert. What did he do with the hair? Brendan. He set it down on the counter. Wiegert. The counter where? Brendan. Like a dresser. Fassbender. What did he use to cut the hair off with? Brendan. The knife. Fassbender. Was she alive? Brendan shakes his head no. Fassbender. Did he say why he did that? Brendan. No. Wiegert. Okay, what else? Fassbender. What else was done to her? Brendan. That he punched her. Wiegert. What else? Pause. What else? Fassbender. He made you do something to her, didn't he? So he would feel better about not being the only person, right? Brendan nods yes. Says, yeah. Wiegert. Mm-hmm. Fassbender. What did he make you do to her? Wiegert. What did he make you do, Brendan? It's okay. What did he make you do? Brendan. Cut her. Wiegert. Cut her where? Brendan. On her throat. Wiegert. Cut her throat? When did that happen? Brendan. Before he picked her off the bed? And I have a question mark after that because when you hear Brendan's voice, you hear his voice go up, meaning he's reaching. So before he picked her off the bed? Wiegert. So she was alive yet, right? Brendan nods yes. Wiegert. So she's alive and you cut her throat? Brendan. Mm-hmm. Wiegert. Was that before or after Steve stabbed her? Brendan. After. Wiegert. It was after Steve stabbed her? Brendan nods yes. Mm-hmm. Wiegert. Was she, how do you know she was alive? Pause. Tell me. When you cut her throat, how did you know she was alive? Brendan. She was breathing a little bit. Wiegert. She was breathing a little bit. Did Steve tell you to do that? Brendan. Yeah. Fassbender and Wiegert speaking at the same time, so I cannot understand. Fassbender. How'd he tell you to do? How'd he tell you to do that? What'd he say? Brendan. To go across her throat and pull it back. Fassbender. Did he say why he wanted you to do that? Brendan. No. Shakes head no. Wiegert. Which knife did you use? Brendan. The same one he stabbed her with. Fassbender. And how many times did he stab her again? Brendan. Once. Fassbender. Are you sure about that? Brendan nods yes. Wiegert. So Steve stabs her first and then you cut her neck. Brendan nods yes. What else happens to her in her head? Fassbender. It's extremely, extremely important you tell us this for us to believe you. Wiegert. Come on, Brendan. What else? Pause. Wiegert. We know. We just need you to tell us. Brendan. That's all I can remember. Wiegert. All right, I'm just going to come out and ask you, who shot her in the head? Brendan. He did. Fassbender. Then why didn't you tell us that? Brendan. Because I couldn't think of it. Fassbender. Now you remember it? Brendan nods yes. Tell us about that then. Brendan. That he shot her with his .22. Wiegert. You were there though? Brendan. Yeah. Wiegert. Where did this happen? Brendan. Outside. Wiegert. Outside? Before? Tell me when it happened. Brendan. When we brung her outside to throw her in the fire. How can anyone think that is voluntary? Well, we got 20 minutes to hit the 2-hour mark, I guess. So I'll go into the next chapter that's titled, I'll Cut You. I attended Brendan's oral arguments at the Seventh Circuit Court in Chicago. That was my first time ever being in a courtroom. I didn't know what to expect. I wrote an article on that experience, and you can read here. Actually, that's not true. That's not my first time being in a courtroom. I served on a jury. That was a dumb thing for me to say. So here's that article. Brendan Dassey, Oral Arguments at the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, February 14th, 2017. Barb Minion number 1 and I, along with our significant others, attended the oral arguments at the Seventh Circuit of Appeals in Chicago on Valentine's Day 2017. I am far from a legal expert, and I don't pretend to be. I took notes of what I saw and heard, and will write that for you here. When the date was first announced, I contacted Steven Drizzen and asked him if I could attend and if I could bring paper and pen to write an article about it. He said I could. The day prior to the court date, I called the court to ask if there was anything special I needed to know about entering the courthouse. I was told seats are first come, first served, and that cell phones can come in but have to be turned off. The courthouse opened at 9 a.m., so we planned to get there by 8 a.m. My boyfriend bought us a spot in a nearby parking garage so that would be one less worry. Barb Minion number 1 lives in another state, so she drove down with her husband the night before after work. We got up early on Tuesday to leave my house in a Chicago suburb at 6:30 a.m. When we got to the courthouse, there was a pool of press already stationed on the first floor. We had to go up to the 27th floor. We got there, and I had to wait in line. I noticed sweaty Ken Kratz, 5 people ahead of me in line right away. And there's the picture of Fathead, sweaty sweat in front of me in line. I started recognizing all the different press people waiting as well. Then I saw Brendan's attorney, Laura Nyrider, and Steven Drizzen walk past. They went into a private room. I talked with the kid in front of me to find out his thoughts on the case. Turns out he was a law student who knew nothing about the case. He had never seen Making a Murderer. He saw the press and decided to come check it out. Drizzen came out of the room and came over to me and pointed out my Justice for Brendan Dassey hoodie I was wearing, and he said he knows I think it's a good thing, but asked if I would take it off. I shook his hand and introduced myself, as all my communication with him has been in messages or on the phone. He said he knows who I am. He thanked me, and then he and Nyrider walked away. I wished Nyrider good luck, and she thanked me. I then saw Laura Riccardi, who, I don't know if that's how you pronounce her name, Ricciardi. I just say Riccardi, who is one of the documentaries from Making a Murderer in Line. I don't know if I'm just paranoid or what, but Kratz kept seeming to be staring at Barb Minion number 1 and I. I am not kidding when I say he was sweating a lot. All I kept saying was, sweaty, sweat, sweat. I just can't stop thinking that when I look at that pig. The courtroom opened and we went in. We chose to sit on the side of the defense in the back row. Kratz sat on the guilty side right behind the Halbach family. I saw both of Teresa's brothers, her mom, and I don't know what you call him, her uncle or her stepdad. There were maybe 125 people total in the courtroom. The room wasn't that big. There weren't any other supporters there other than us. Everyone else seemed to be law students or people who just wanted to come watch a show. We sat there for a half hour. Kratz's young girlfriend kept rubbing his back and seemed to be glaring our way. That may be my paranoia again. It was just very odd. She just kept looking at us. The 3 judges came in at 9:30 a.m. Wisconsin Deputy Solicitor Peter Berg got to speak first. He started reading his prepared speech about Brendan choosing to confess, and that the interrogators were just encouraging him to tell the truth, and that they didn't apply any pressure. And then U.S. Appellate Court Judge Alana Rovner interrupted him. Judge Rovner asked, do I even talk about this? We'll see if I talk about this. Judge Rovner asked about Brendan's low IQ and said that he was highly suggestible. Berg said nothing was promised to Brendan as a benefit for his cooperation. Berg claimed that they can't make any promises. Judge Rovner said Brendan was told the truth would set him free. Berg said that he doesn't think Brendan thought that meant he would go free. He said Brendan volunteered the details. Then Berg started spouting off a lot of numbers. The microphones were not on, he wasn't facing me, and I am deaf in one ear. Oh, numbers and I are not friends. So I got lost in Berg saying something about Brendan resisted their offers 35 times, denied that he shot her or that there was a fire going. When Brendan was asked about her hair, he said he didn't know. Judge Rovner said that the interrogator said that he is a father and he wished he could help Brendan. He said, I am not a cop right now. That was a blatant lie. Berg said at that time the interrogators only thought Brendan was a witness. Judge Rovner said that they showed frustration when Brendan didn't say what they wanted. Berg said that the interrogators' main concern was Brendan telling the truth. Be honest. They didn't want him to make things up. Be honest. Judge Rovner said Brendan was particularly suggestible. She brought up the line of questioning. Who shot her in the head? Judge Rovner said that plants information to taint the confession. Berg said it is an appropriate interview technique. Judge Rovner said Brendan said they cut her hair and did other various things to her. Berg said they didn't know if Teresa Halbach... Sorry, I start to get tired when I read. Was shot... Am I saying my book is boring? Am I boring myself? The guilters will take that and run with it. Berg said they didn't know if Teresa Halbach was shot in the bedroom or in the garage until Brendan told them. Judge Anne Claire Williams asked if Brendan's age was considered during the interrogation. Berg said something about the ineffective assistance of counsel, and that would be used against Steven. I kind of got lost during this part as I couldn't hear. They kept citing the Sullivan case. Now, I told you I do not know the law at all. So I see in narrator's brief, it is Kyler versus Sullivan. When I look it up, I find brief fact summary. And this is before ChatGPT. So I back then now would have used that to understand stuff better. Brief fact summary. Respondent challenges his murder conviction on the grounds that his counsel's representation of his co-defendants presented an unacceptable conflict of interest that denied him effective assistance of counsel. Synopsis of rule of law. Defendants alleging a conflict of interest in cases in which multiple defendants are being represented by the same attorney in the same matter must demonstrate an actual conflict that adversely affected the outcome. Judge David Hamilton asked if there was any physical evidence that a rape or a wound to Teresa Halbach's throat occurred. Berg said no, because the body was burned. Judge Hamilton said, so they only have Brendan's confession. Berg said there weren't any promises of leniency. Any promises were vague. Judge Rovner said the police were allowed to induce a confession to get a confession. Judge Rovner asked why was the May 13th interview not introduced to trial? Was it because of a ruling? Berg said he wasn't sure. I'm sure Kratz was dying to raise his hand like a sweat hog and proclaim he knows the answer. Judge Rovner said Brendan's alleged confession is unreliable. Berg said Brendan chose to make that call to the police. Judge Rovner said they told Brendan that he doesn't want to be lying to his mom. I really thought Judge Rovner was awesome. And there's a chance I'm related to her. She just kept reading from the coerced confession. Berg kept saying it was voluntary. Rovner is my maiden name, or my birth name, I should say. When put in context to what the judge is reading, in my opinion, Berg looked ridiculous. Berg was done at 9:52 a.m. Laura Nyrider went to the podium. She began reading her prepared speech. She said the interrogators told Brendan that they know he is scared and that he was going to be arrested, but they think he would be all right. They said they already knew what happened. Judge Hamilton interrupted Nyrider like Judge Rovner did to Berg when he was speaking. He asked if there was another case where the child thought they were going to go back to school. Nyrider said they told Brendan that it was okay because they already know. Judge Williams brought up the Sullivan case again. She asked if the police knew about Brendan's intellect. Nyrider said they knew he had an IQ of 73. I believe Stevens is 71. Brendan was in a special ed support system. She said they knew his age. Nyrider said it isn't relevant if they knew his IQ. It was their suggestions. They repeated it like a drumbeat. Judge Hamilton asked if Brendan heard his Miranda rights and was told they couldn't make any promises. Nyrider said that Len Kaczynski did not turn over evidence of the video that Michael O'Kelly had, so the defense didn't know the pressures they put on Brendan on May 12th. They didn't just say that everything was going to be okay. They said they knew he was scared of getting arrested, but that he was okay. Nyrider said that was enough for a 16-year-old developmentally challenged boy to think he would be going back to school. Judge Hamilton asked who the source was about him cutting Teresa's throat after she was raped. He said that it was either known from memory or it was made up. He said it was contradictory. It comes out slowly, but it was Brendan's free will. Nyrider said they let him embellish until he got to their plot point. They gave Brendan false promises of leniency. They gave him each step and then allowed him to tell their story. They said Teresa Halbach was shackled to a wooden headboard, yet there was no marks on it. Brendan was trying to guess how Teresa was killed. There's not a trace of forensic evidence of Teresa Halbach or of Brendan being in that trailer. Judge Rovner brought up the closing arguments in Brendan's case when Kratz said that an innocent person would not confess, but they know many who have. Nyrider said that false confessions happen all the time. She cited the Central Park Five, now known as the Exonerated Five. That's not in my book, so maybe at that time they were still Central Park Five. Nyrider said they now use Brendan's interrogation to teach what not to do. Was there any physical evidence linking Brendan to a murder? No. They led him to say that the shooting happened in the garage because of the bullet they found there. When Brendan was first asked where he was shot, he said by the fire. Nyrider said the investigators provided Brendan the answers they wanted him to say, like that Teresa's electronics were in the burning barrel. Nyrider was done speaking at 10:14 a.m. Berg got a chance to speak one more time. He again said that nothing said to Brendan was a promise. Berg claimed Brendan got specific warnings. Berg said these were Brendan's memories of Teresa Halbach. None of this was suggested. Brendan is the one who said he heard Teresa screaming and saw her chained to the bed. He saw her crying. He said that there was an awful smell when her body was burning. Berg said Brendan said all of that voluntarily. He was done speaking at 10:18 a.m. Judge Rovner said that both sides were very well briefed and it will be taken under advisement. That was the end of the hearing. What is my takeaway from this? I always say positive in both Brendan and Steven's cases. My heart and my head both say this went very well for Brendan. Nye Ryder is so impressive. I have complete faith in her. The judges can take 6 to 9 months before they rule. So we are back to waiting. As soon as I hear of a decision, it will be posted immediately. Until then, please think happy thoughts for Brendan and his mom and dad. That boy needs to go home to his parents and get to just chill out playing video games for hours. Hashtag free Brendan. Hashtag making a murderer. Hashtag we all live on Avery Road. Hashtag never give up. That's the end of the article. Barb Minion number 1. Barb and I all got matching tattoos for Brendan using the dragonfly logo my husband designed. We were getting along fine and doing our best to ignore the drama that Carla and her minions always attempted to stir up. One weekend in October, Barb Minion number 1 was coming to visit me on her way to see Brendan as she was on his visitors list. Barb called me that Friday night and told me she had given Brendan her blessing to add me to his visitors list. I thanked her. I was looking forward to visiting him instead of just talking to him on the phone. Then it all changed. Here is the reality of the making a murderer world. There are supporters and there are fans. The people who defend the family at all costs are just fans. Fan is short for fanatical. Fanatical means filled with excessive and single-minded zeal, or obsessively concerned with something. People think if they get a title of admin or moderator of Facebook group, they are something special. It just becomes a mean girl clique. Yeah, Christopher, don't think you're special, that you are a moderator here. Barb Minion number 1 got jealous and mad because another fan also would talk to Brendan on the phone and was going to go visit him around the time she was going to go. Inmates are only allowed X amount of visits per week. So Barb Minion complained to her second in command that if the fan interfered with her visit, quote, I will cut her, unquote. Did she really mean she was going to physically harm the girl? Of course not. But Barb Minion number 2 seized the opportunity to strike. She told Barb that now I just have it marked as BM number 1 for Barb Minion number 1, was threatening to kill supporters. Barb and Scott confronted Barb Minion number 1 about it, and she had a tantrum and walked away. I spent a lot of the weekend on the phone with Barb and the fangirl trying to talk them down that BM number 1 didn't mean actual harm, but the damage was done. I was still moderating Barb's group for a couple days after that. Then all of a sudden, Scott Toddick booted me from the group. I had no idea what I did. I confronted him, and he talked about me being mad at Barb Minion number 1. I said it had nothing to do with me. Scott put me back in as a moderator, but only for a short while before he banned me again, and then made a post saying, wait for it, I am a thief. That is always their go-to attack on me, even though I gave the money to Barb in cash and he was right there. Even though I made countless shirts for Scott and everyone in that family who didn't pay for them. Even though I made a special shirt for Barb at Scott's request to give to her for her birthday that he didn't pay me for. Even though my husband made new business cards and signs for the salvage yard and didn't charge them for them. I am a thief. Really? So all because Barb Minion number 1 got jealous, now I become the enemy. Again. This opened the floodgates for Carla and her minions. They now went all out on social media calling me a thief. One minion went so far as to call the Attorney General and my local police department to say I stole t-shirt money. The police in my town called me in, and I told them everything that happened. I even gave them Steven Drizen's cell phone number, since he told me he didn't want the money, and that was the money I was being accused of stealing. At the end of that, the minion was told that she needed to, quote, knock it off, unquote, as there was no investigation into me and I didn't steal any money. She was harassing me. Of course, they didn't stop their harassment. They still continue that song to this day. Here's an article I wrote about the above paragraph when it was happening. This article was titled, Schizo's Harassment. Sit back, kiddies. This is going to be long. Carla, make sure you take a screenshot and forward this along. Hi, Carla, because she'll be watching this. I asked you last night if you wanted to end this drama and move forward. You didn't take my offer, so I guess I will end it myself. Today starts our troll weight loss challenge. I was up in my home gym getting it all pretty to take a picture to post for all the trolls to see. I got a call from my boyfriend Jeff. He told me that he just got a call on his work phone from a detective in our town, and he left a voicemail asking Jeff or Jax to call him back because he was looking into some shirt thing for a Lisa, which is Psycho, and wanted to hear our side of the story. Jeff called me and told me to call to deal with it. I called Mark Lutz, and he told me he received a packet from Schizo a month ago about me stealing money from shirt sales for Brendan Dassey's lawyer. I asked him if he had some time because this was long. He said, quote, go for it, unquote. So I told him how Psycho has been cyberbullying me and several others since June over the shirt sale, that the orange shirt went to Barb and there are PayPal receipts that Jeff posted monthly to show where the money went and that I could send those to him. He said there was no need as Psycho included that in her huge packet. She had that, a DVD of my Facebook chat, and even the picture she asked to take with me because I was famous when we met back in May, among other things. He said then in her long written stuff, it said to refer to exhibit whatever. He was laughing about it. She told him that she had purchased a shirt back in May and showed him documentation of that. He asked if she received the shirt. She said she did. He said, okay. Mark Lutz has talked to the Secretary of State along with Barry Goldman at the Attorney General's office about Psycho's complaint. They all concur that nothing criminal is going on here. All that happened is that it was either a mess up by my organization's agent or on the Attorney General's side that in your yearly filing you have to list 3 officers. They only had 2 listed, even though my officers have been the same for 3 years. Lutz said he has to call Psycho back today, even though he doesn't want to. This made me laugh out loud. He's going to tell her that what she is doing is harassment and that she can be charged. He asked me to forward him the email I received from Drizen, dated on July 25th, 2016, that said, quote, Jax, someone is calling me about money from t-shirt sales at the Manitowoc rally that was supposed to be sent to Northwestern. I don't care about the money. I am not going to return her call, but I suggest that you let it drop too, unquote. You can find an actual screenshot of that email in the albums in this group. This was in a group, what was this group called? M-A-M Drama? I don't know. We've had so many groups. Lutz then asked if I had Drizen's number. Why? I do. I even have his cell number. Do you, Carla? So I gave Mark Lutz Drizen's cell phone number. I'm sure there is more that I am forgetting. Basically, the officer and I were laughing at how stupid this is and that this girl is harassing me. I would love to be there today when Psycho either gets this screenshot or gets the call from Mark Lutz. MR, that was one of my moderators of Steven Avery project at the time. MR, don't tweet this yet. I would love if she found out about it when she gets the call. But I couldn't wait to tell all y'all because what happened is so fucking funny. I called Jeff to tell him what happened, and he has some very good points. By Psycho sending this huge packet to the police department, she has actually proven the case I have against her for harassment. So there you have the bulk of the conversation. When will Carla and her minions stop the cyberbullying and defamation? She can pretend she doesn't do anything, but we have screenshots to prove differently. Back at rally time, when minion number 1 got her big ego and went on the warpath to make the rally I organized her event, I said fine. I won't have anything to do with their event after I tried to negotiate a resolution. But I had told Carla, even if she told me I couldn't go, I was still going to promote the Barbara Todek's mother's law petition that wouldn't exist if not for me. My partner at Free Brendan Dassey Facebook page also runs Injustice Anywhere. I formed freebrendan.org, which is where my articles are posted. Free Brendan Facebook is a Facebook page for Injustice Anywhere that I run. I am the one that got Bruce involved in this petition since Injustice Anywhere does these petitions all the time. Their board has lawyers on it even. They are the ones that wrote the petition. Barb's name is just on it. Go look at the petition. Scroll to the bottom. See who it's managed by? Injustice Anywhere, freebrendan.org, and our Free Brendan Dassey Facebook page. Barb's fan group is listed as well. We have the password and log into that petition. We do the updates on it. Anyway, I told Carla that I would still come to the rally I organized no matter what because I wanted to bring awareness to the petition. So I wake up the next morning to find out that somehow that chick who initially started the petition but doesn't live in this country and wrote it like a third grader who voluntarily left the petition so we could actually make it credible had filed for a recovery password and took the petition away from Injustice Anywhere and locked them out of it. Then Carla went one further and called my partner to tell him that I was under investigation by the Attorney General. Oh, but Carla doesn't have anything to do with any of this, does she? So this should put an end to the bullshit of them spreading the lies that I stole any shirt money and that I or my organization is under any kind of investigation. We are not! Exclamation point. Carla, you and your minions need to stop all the fucking bullshit. Stop having people spam Steven Avery Project or contact people who like the page with your ignorant posts just trying to draw people to your fan groups. The people of Steven Avery Project don't even know who you are. Sorry, but they don't go to your Twitter page to find out what minute and second you were glimpsed on making a murderer. They don't care about you. They don't care about your fans. They care about Steven and Brendan. Just like that is what I care about, and anyone affiliated with any of our pages or groups. So stop the bullshit. We don't do shit to any of you. We react to your actions. Don't attack us. We don't have anything to respond to. Stop with the bullshit about MR. He isn't shaming anyone for anything. Who cares if at some point he likes a public guilter page? You associate with guilters all the time. Does that mean you think your family is guilty? Oh yeah, that's right. You do, since you said all the time that it was Scott and maybe Bobby. Don't tell me to show you proof. I am sick of you claiming that. You said it. You know it. Just stop the games. MR is a great supporter. So are the people you and Barb's Brendanites have thrown out of her fan group just for associating with me. People don't need to worship you or Barb to be supporters of Brendan and Steven. You are so wrong about that. I thought you and I were friends at one point. I really liked you. I loved your daughters and your husband. I don't fault them for hating me now because you have poisoned them. I still love Barb. Barb Minion number 1 misses Barb terribly. She cries for Barb and Brendan all the time. All she wanted to do is protect them and Pete Dassey, good people who have had something horrible happen to them. But you and your minions just think this has to be about you. You go on a mission to destroy anyone you can't control. Minion number 3 went after me for joining a group after I asked both Barb Minion number 1 and Scott Todek's permission to join it to see what was going on in there. Even this whole guilter shit. Why can't we all just get along? This case is seriously fucked up. The only thing I am sure of is that Brendan didn't do it. Steven didn't either. Anyone else? Could be. So why can't we all discuss the facts of the case without getting so bitchy about it? You have to be on my page, but don't be on another page. Knock that shit off. I don't really care what groups anyone is in. All I care about is that they don't talk shit about me or Steven or Brendan. I don't care if you don't like me or call me names. I get that I am a bitch and abrasive. Not many people like me. But don't make shit up and lie. Carla has a current shoplifting record. Carla had a fundraiser at her house almost a year ago that the money and items have never been turned over. Minion number one had a fraudulent GoFundMe that said it was raising money for permits for the rally that I negotiated with Manitowoc and the ACLU to not have to pay. Want to see those emails? I have them. Supporters didn't donate money and items for Carla and company to have a party. But I am a thief because $400 didn't go to Drizzen, who told me he didn't care about the money, so I gave it to Barb instead. Oh, and despite what Courtney Dassey claims on the Barb fan page, I am not selling shirts and don't have a GoFundMe. Barb has one. Carla has one. A Minion has one. Dolores has one. Nope, we have never had one. We may do some fundraisers, though. Maybe we will sell shirts for Steven now that we run the Steven Avery project. No one has been promoting that for him. Curtis was so scared to have anything to do with money because of the witch hunt Carla and company would do, as they already did enough to him. But that has upset Steven, as he has needs and wants in prison. The money that goes to KZ goes to his DNA testing. So we direct people now to donate to his canteen so he can buy soap, underwear, Cheetos, whatever. Okay, sorry, this has rambled on far too long. It's what I do. Once I get started, I can't shut the fuck up. I really need to go get my workout in because I am going to kick all the fellow trolls' asses and lose this weight. Yeah, I'm still trying. I will end this saying again, if anyone has questions for me, feel free to post it here or PM any of us privately if you aren't comfortable saying it on social media where others can see. I don't have anything to hide. And then I'll hashtag we all live on Avery Road, hashtag why can't we all get along, hashtag the complete and innocent, the hashtag never give up. The end of that article. The Seventh Circuit had ruled in Brendan's favor, but the state then called for a hearing with all the judges instead of just 3. Here's my article on that one. And how long is this? Okay, it's not very, it's like 3 pages, so I'll read this so we can continue this. It's titled Good Cop, Bad Cop. Brendan Dassey's en banc hearing at the 7th Circuit of Appeals, 9/26/2017, by Jax West. Before I get into today's hearing, if you want a refresher on what happened at Brendan's last hearing at the 7th Circuit on Valentine's Day, here's my summary. And I didn't post it in the book because it's, I'm not going to, since I had posted it completely in the article, there's no reason for me to post that because I just read it to you. I had to get up bright and early as I had to go pick up Paul Kaluzinski because he wanted to go to the hearing. His daughter, Melissa, is currently in prison for being coerced into a false confession for an alleged murder she didn't commit. Melissa is also represented by Kathleen Zellner. You can get updates on her case on her Facebook page that is run by her family here, and I had the link. Her case has been on 48 Hours twice, now 3 times. It is called Blaming Melissa. You can watch it here in the link, and then the other one, you can donate to the Kaluzinski family here and their GoFundMe. So as you can see, Paul has a big interest in wrongfully accused cases as well as coerced confessions. But he is also a really great guy. His family has gone through hell. Paul's health is not great, yet he is always there for any other case and will help however he can. We will talk more about Paul and his daughter's case as well as other cases we advocate for on Saturday. So I guess I had a live set up when I wrote that article. Traffic was horrible, so we got there late. But we were still able to get seats in the courtroom. The judges didn't come into the courtroom until 10:01 a.m. This time it was 7 judges, 4 women and 3 men. I didn't mark down which judge said what, so just bear with me. A judge said that the power was out over the weekend, so they didn't have the podium lights, which would indicate when their time was up for speaking. They would have to pay attention to someone holding up a card on the side of the room. I thought that was odd since the person holding up the card was way off to the side, so the lawyers at the podium did not have them in their eyesight, but whatever. The state was up first. The attorney claimed that Brendan confessed because his guilt became unbearable. A judge asked, but was his confession voluntary? I did not like when the judge said that no one questions the terrible nature of this murder because if you have done your research, you know there is no real credible evidence in this case at all. The judge pointed out that Brendan's age and his low IQ. The attorney said that there were 2 paragraphs in Brendan's confession that were not coerced. The judge said Brendan was given false promises that he would get to go back to class. She said that the testing they do is for competent adults and that juveniles are not adults. She said you would need a different test. And let me pause here because I also want to add, when Brendan did that false confession, you also have to remember he had several interrogations happen already, some recorded, some not. So some of the things that he says on that day are things that had also have been said to him before. So when they're saying he said it of his own free will or voluntarily or whatever, he'd also heard of these things before in prior interrogations. Another judge said that Brendan was told 28 times that everything was going to be okay because they already knew the truth. The state claimed that Brendan knew anything he said could be used against him. The judge said they acted like his father. She said most people who dismantle a corpse wouldn't think they would get to go back to school. She didn't think he understood that. The attorney said that Barb, Brendan's mom, gave permission for them to question Brendan and that she refused to go in the room with them. I know that's not true. A judge brought up how the Reed technique has been tossed from trainings due to the high risk of false confessions. The attorney said that's meaningless. The judge was incredulous at that comment. She said this was like a game of 20 questions. Brendan said he cut her hair, slit her throat, punched her until they asked who shot her in the head. The attorney said that Brendan gave 2 details without being prompted. He said that Brendan is the one who told them that they put Teresa into the back of her truck when she was dead, and that he heard her screaming when he was on his bike. Which theory are you going with, buddy? Judge said that everyone knew Teresa was dead by the time they did these interviews with Brendan. She pointed out all the contradictions in Brendan's statements. She said there is no evidence that Teresa was handcuffed to the bed. The attorney said there were handcuffs in the room. The judge said that is not proof that she had been handcuffed in there. A judge said that the courts are horrified at attorney Len Kaczynski's actions. He said he represented the victims. That was a conflict of interest. The attorney admitted that was indefensible. The judge said Brendan would have been better off pro se than having Kaczynski as his lawyer. The attorney said Kaczynski left the case. The judge said the damage was done by the time he left. A judge said you can see a difference in Brendan from when he was left alone or when Barb is in the room to when he was being interrogated. The attorney again asserted that the confession was voluntary. The judge said Brendan was just guessing and that he was just trying to answer the questions however the interrogators would like. The state said that Brendan resisted answering at least 35 times. A judge said Brendan told them that he just couldn't think of it. A judge said the interrogators made her skin crawl because they were so dishonest with a vulnerable person. The attorney said it was just a minor deception. The judge said it was a major deception. The state's time was up at 10:32 a.m., and then Laura Nyrider took the podium. Nyrider said they issued a promise of leniency if Brendan said what they wanted. A judge disagreed. Now I should say here, this is why I call this recap bad cop, good cop. The judges attacked the state, And now the judges that didn't speak then attacked Nyrider. Nyrider said Brendan was told, quote, honesty would set him free, unquote. A judge said they just encouraged him to be honest and to get it off his chest. He said that the interrogators can bluff. Nyrider mentioned Brendan's IQ and said Brendan was just repeating the story that they told him. The judge asked what can the interrogators do to solve the crime. Nyrider said they shouldn't say that I am a cop, but I am not one now. The judge said she is creating new law on habeas review, and there's no case that says they can not do those things. Nyrider said she's not asking them to erect a rule. She said Brendan was asking to go back to school. The whole rape was fed to him on February 27th. They asked him if he tried to have sex with her, and he said no. They asked him if he put the body in the fire because if he did, it's okay. Brendan repeated back the same body parts. They asked him if he saw them in the fire. They asked him if he remembered a smell. A judge asked if there were tires in the fire, and Brendan said those don't smell great. The judge asked what about the things not fed to Brendan. Laura Nyrider said Brendan said the shooting was by the fire, but they switched it to the garage, so they had him say that. A judge said that Nyrider was arguing the interrogator's motive. Nyrider said no, she's not. The judge said, so the interrogators needed two killers. Nyrider said no, they didn't. They needed the truth. A judge asked when the shell casings were found. Laura Nyrider said in November 2005. Nyrider brought up multiple times that it was obvious Brendan had a low IQ to him not able to spell many words. Her time was up at 11:02 a.m. The state got one more shot. A judge asked him if people ever make contradictory statements during interrogations. She said she is not at rest with what Brendan actually knows. The attorney claimed it was clear that they were not making him any promises. He said this is the sixth time this case has been reviewed and was trying to brag that most think he is guilty. The judge said a lot have had issues with it too. The attorney said that you won't find one case that finds the confession is involuntary. He said they should prevent the second guessing of state courts. It was all over at 11:07 a.m. The judges said they would take it under advisement. It would be months before we hear how they rule. My thoughts? I am not knowledgeable on case law or any other legal matters. What I do know is Brendan Dassey is innocent. What you saw in Making a Murderer is who Brendan is today. He is a sweet boy. He is not into harming anything. I'm disgusted by our legal system that Brendan, Steven, Melissa, Kent, and countless others are in prison for crimes they didn't commit, and it takes longer to get them out than it does to lock them up. I didn't like the bullshit from the state or the bad cop judges who tried to say that you could not let Brendan go for this because there is no prior case like this. So, right is right and wrong is wrong. Brendan is an innocent boy in prison for what? Because the state doesn't want to admit that the Manitowoc Sheriff's Department had an issue with Steven Avery, so they wanted to lock him up, and then later didn't want to pay him the millions rightfully owed to him for taking away his life? I do have to admit that I do not think Laura Nyrider did a good job today. She seemed rattled, or maybe she was just pissed at the bad cops. But I do know how much she cares about Brendan and wants him to be out and safe. I should add that Jerry Buting was there. He was the only person to talk to the press afterward. I know he has his detractors, but he seriously didn't do it for any spotlight. He cares about Steven and Brendan both. I talked to him for a while afterward. He wanted for someone to speak for them, so he did it. Buting believes wholeheartedly in their innocence. So there you have it. If you want to listen to the hearing for yourself, you can do so here. And I have a link to the 7th Circuit Court where you could do it. And then where you could donate to Brendan's Canteen. And then a prison catalog where you could order stuff for him. And that's where we're going to end this today. 2.5 hours. When I said I was going to do an hour. See, I gab and gab. So when we do this the next time, the chapter we will start on is called Steven Avery Project. So it'll be when we took over Steven Avery Project. Um, I I want to do these book ones on Saturdays, at this time because that seems to be the best one for um all over. Sorry, I'm okay. No, that's just a voicemail from that. I'm going to look at my calendar to see. So, I think I am free next Saturday, the 18th, but I will double check with that. Um, I'm not sure. So you'll just have to watch Stephen Avery Project. I will look at what I have going on, and then Christopher makes the event and posts it in all of the groups. Just Jax. Um, so we'll schedule another Saturday to do part 3 of reading Wrongfully Abused, making an advocate for Stephen Avery. And then I want to do a weeknight one that's one of the Ask Jax Anything where, because so many people want to talk about the case, people are new to the case and want to talk about it. So um, I I know I've got something at night on, I have two things at night on Thursday this week. Um, it's not even on my calendar on here, but I've got two things on Thursday. Do I have anything work? I don't have anything. So I don't know. You're just going to have to stay tuned to Stephen Avery Project, and we'll post when we do those. Um, Thing that I always say to people: if you are a witness or have any information on this case, please reach out to his attorney, KathleenTZellner.com. She's got a Stephen Avery page on there where there's the direct link to get a hold of her. But there are times that you reach out to her and you don't hear back. So you can either private message Stephen Avery Project. You can email me at either official Stephen Avery Project at gmail.com or justicewithjax@gmail.com. And I can try and be a go between you and Kathleen. But please reach out to Kathleen. Um, my latest correspondence with Steven, it was weird. He messaged me. I'm going into the thing now. 3 days ago. So he messaged me 3 days ago, 7:45 a.m., saying, "So are you up? And when are you talking to Kathleen this week? If you got time, we can talk." And then I didn't message him back. So that was at 7:45 a.m. on 3 days ago, April 8th. Um, and so then I responded at 9:02 a.m. saying, "I don't have anything scheduled to talk to Kathleen, but if you ever need me to pass something on to her, I can. I'm driving to work now, but I'm available to talk at any time during the day as my boss is out of the office." And he's never responded to that. So I don't know why he thought I'd be talking to Kathleen or whatever. But if any news ever comes out, I go live as soon as I can, or we get stuff posted. If you see news on the case that's not posted here, please let us know that you might see it before us. Am I forgetting anything else that I like to cover before we end this? Um, Christopher's already plugged my book where you can get it on Amazon. All right. So yeah, just watch Stephen Avery Project for when I'm going live next. If you watch this not live as we just went and you've got questions, I most likely won't see them. So again, this is being filmed. This is April 11th. It's now like 12:30 p.m. Chicago time. So when you watch this later, I'm not seeing your questions. So then you'll have to hold those questions or message them to me, or wait for when I do an Ask Jax anything. All right, we made it. 2 hours. Why does this mouse constantly... I'm going to have to... Maybe this mouse needs to be charged, that it keeps shutting off on me and I have to turn it off and turn it back on. All right, we are at the 2.5 hour mark. I am out. I think I'll go for a walk outside now as investigation continues. Bye, Denise.